Okay, welcome back, guys. This is podcast number 4. I'm joined by Craig Seaton and I'm Chet Carson.
How do?
How's things?
Good, man.
Yeah.
How are you today? How are you feeling?
I'm a little zenned out. So for guys that don't know about anything about breathwork, Craig teaches breathwork. I think we briefly mentioned it in the previous podcast. He teaches these classes called breathwork classes, and you're basically doing holotropic breathing.
Yeah.
Yep. And I was kind of out of it after that. And usually talking after that is very difficult. So I'm going to try my best.
Yeah.
How was your experience today with the breathwork class?
Great, man. The energy was just wonderful. It was strong. It was vibrant. It was alive.
Yeah.
But it was just such a smooth ending as well. Like, I love it. I love the mixture of different people. Everybody brings their own energy. Every time is unique because of that reason. And yeah, magic. Love it. I'm so grateful I get to do this and to share it with people. And it's a gift from life, man. Yeah, I absolutely love it.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think I've definitely done a few sessions where the energy's been all over the place because of maybe one or two individuals that are a bit too intense. But it always works out when everyone's on the same playing field or the same frequency. You can really feel it.
Yeah,
like,
even noticing that, like, how great is that you can notice, oh, that energy's a bit higher, or it's a bit lower, it's a bit quiet today, it's a bit erratic, or it's vibrant, like that we're functioning like what was the word Tony used before, like a transmitter, or like a radio of sorts, and it can measure different levels of energy. And just tuning into that and our ability to perceive and to read energy is such a great skill that has really been forgotten about, I think.
It's definitely forgotten now. Yeah.
But you think how loud life is around us, isn't it? You know, music on, or big colour everywhere, TV, movies, and it's like you can't hear the little voice when the music's so loud.
So maybe that's because we're too over-reliant on sight. We're too over-reliant on one sense, so the other senses become a little less active, if you want to put it that way. So when we rely too much on sight, which everything you see in life is based on how things look, we tend not to listen to things, feel things, and hear things. No, I've already said listen to things. Feel things and smell things. And I think that's what becomes maybe a little bit of a burden for us. Yeah,
man. I think that's a perfect branch into what we want to talk today about spirituality, because of the perceptions that we get from all the sensory organs, from the external world. That's why we're always looking outward. And until we have something that tweaks us into that spiritual call, and it goes, oh, look inside, look here, then we go, so those senses that are doing such a wonderful job, they're useful to navigate life and to get through life, of course, and they bring pleasure or they can bring pain, whatever, how sharp or dull those senses can be. But they're a tool of the vehicle, being the body, because inside is where the real magic is, right? Yeah. And the more that we discover the inside, the more you can play with the external world without the seriousness and the denseness of life is feeling, life is sensation, life is coming from around me rather than from in me. And you use the world to experience and to be joyful and to be a part of it, but you're not dependent on it anymore. You're not dependent on the senses feedback to what your life should be about, including thinking.
Yeah, there's a saying again by Sadhguru: happiness and joy is a feeling, not a destination. So a lot of people are chasing happiness and joy, but most people will never get there because it's not a destination. It's how you feel right now, how you interpret certain things, how you respond to certain things. So it comes from that, and I feel tying it in with the senses, once you switch off the main sense, which is sight, you can then start to listen to the inner voice better. So your sense of hearing becomes a lot more in tune, and same as sense of taste and smell just becomes way more in tune. I think once you switch off the sight sense, then you can really explore the inner world. We talk about dreaming of becoming an astronaut, going out there in space and seeing the whole universe, our own galaxy first of all, and then the rest of the stars. But 99.9% of us, or maybe more than 99.999% of us, will never get there, right? We'll never become astronauts. So our journey should be more about focusing on the inside. So becoming the inner astronaut, as I say. So go inside, explore what's going on inside. And the thing is, you get to experience that every day. Whereas astronauts, they're only in space for a short period of time, so they have to process everything as soon as possible and take everything in as much as possible as well. Whereas when we're focusing on the inside, whenever you want to tune into it, you go into it. So I think that's where it should start for most people, and that goes perfectly into our first topic, which is spirituality and how you got into spirituality. So, Craig?
Yeah, well, I think as we went into in the first podcast briefly about how we got there, and just a small recap wasn't in my life whatsoever, wasn't in my background, wasn't in my circle of friends. At the age of 24, I ended up going to the Buddhist Center because a friend invited me she said, let's go and check out meditation. And again, as I always remember and I always say, I always thought, ninjas, I love ninjas, you know, martial arts and stuff like that. Ninjas did meditation. Yeah, okay, I'll check it out. It was Buddhism and meditation classes. I had the first meditation session and bang, big slap. I was like, whoa, what have I just felt? What was that? And that was it. From 24 onwards, that was it. Direction completely changed. Philosophy, religion, psychology, spirituality, cultures, space, universe. I always had an interest in space anyway, stars.
I think everyone does.
I hope so. I think definitely as a kid, that hunger for it. I mean, the ability to be awestruck by staring at something is the childhood nature, isn't it? Right? You just look at someone and go, yeah. Kids are great at it. And there's a point I want to talk about actually, is like how you lose that. What you say is kid-like, you know, the childlike nature to just be in awe, to play, and to not have the egos developed or the conditioning,
the curiosity and everything.
And for me, it was always like, you would say, get those childlike qualities back. But that would also have a condition in my mind, like it's childlike, so it's lesser in a way, or it's not as valid as an adult experience because it's childlike, it's playful, but actually it's not. It's like that childlike quality is a description of the quality we need to develop and to grow back, because the child is in awe, the child is in the present, the child is reacting to how it feels. But with the adult mind, we can understand our responses, so not just instantly reactions, because as we spoke in the other podcast, self-reflection, but understanding that experience is going on inside. So we can have that beautiful combination of that duality of the adult and the child. So it's one thing, they're not separate, or he's being childlike, or he's too strict of an adult. It's like, use the energies to encompass it all, and that just deepens and richens your experience of life and what we're capable of. But to go back to meditation, which led me into all those side sites. I had then explored lucid dreaming. That was my next spiritual milestone.
How long were you doing that? I know you
still continue now.
I remember when I bumped into you at the coffee bar, coffee shop last time. You had your journal, and that was 4 years.
We looked at it. It was 2014. It was my first dream.
6 years.
Down. 6 years.
Jeez.
Yeah, 6 years. Meditation's been 7 to 8 years.
Right. Okay.
And I'd either use an app or write them down in my diary. It's not always been that consistent, but there's always been a dream practice in my life. And the second day I heard about lucid dreaming and bought a book on it, the second day I knew what lucid dreaming was, never knew about it before. I had a lucid dream, and that tells me something, like it was brought in your awareness, then it manifested in your life. And from that point, that experience, there was a symbol in it. It was like a Buddha head that was spinning, and I was lucid, and I was just the feeling and the energy. It was like, and I felt this sprinkle going off in the center of my brain, like I was like, what was that? What was that feeling? And I woke up so much energy, so much more in love with life and for the experience I just had, which led me to go, there's more going on. It's not just the reality that we see. There's so much more going on. And then it was a few months later when I went to do psychedelics, went to do mushrooms in Amsterdam. Because again, scared growing up of all this stuff. You hear the horror stories, the dragons, and people peel themselves and all this crazy stuff. But that's because of setting, if it even is true anyway, you know, because there's the whole propaganda against this kind of stuff. So I researched the hell out of it, because if I do something, I'll go all in and figure it out first, because I wanted to do ayahuasca. So anyway, I went there to do the mushrooms, had a small dose the first day, like 1 star out of 5, did a bag of mushrooms. The next day, got 2 packs of the strongest ones and smashed them with a good friend.
What was the experience like?
Life-changing, it was life-changing. And that put me onto the whole psychedelic path. And it was with that experience that I felt that sprinkler go off in my brain again in the pineal gland, and I was like, so there's a link here between the lucid dreaming state and the psychedelic state, which I put the link together was the release of DMT, dimethyltryptamine, which we can stimulate through the breath work and have those transcendental experiences. So I just, this whole path, I didn't see the connection that I understand now, that we can do all of this ourselves without psychedelics or without the lucid dream. It's like we're capable of all these experiences. We just need to clear the pathways and break our limited conditions and understand it. But yeah, I was on the psychedelics for 2 to 3 years, really got a big love and interest for those, and then I came across the breath work. In time of that, studying all different kinds of philosophies, religions, traditions, cultures, Gnosticism, Tantra, which now my main practice really is breath work, Tantra, meditation, energy work. That's it for me at the minute.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what's your current daily practice? Like, what's your spirituality going towards, and where are you trying to take it?
To be honest, man, I think where I am right now, because I've spent a lot of time in the intellectual mind of figuring things out, learning philosophies, learning from other people's religions, and having a big love for Buddhism, which put me into Hinduism and into Taoism, and I love the Eastern philosophies, which made me, I suppose, a bit resistant and ignorant at times towards Christianity. I did have a massive interest in Sufism, which is an offshoot of Islam. It's mainly the mystical branches are the ones that don't force a certain opinion of thought on you, which is why I like the Eastern philosophies, and which you can go into definitely to tell us about, man. But for what it is now, it's out of the intellectual and feel and experience, because I've always been in the mind, and it's even with great feelings, it's all about the heart and actually learning from myself now. J. Krishnamurti, like a wonderful man. I love his teachings. He's very stern and strict, but
that's
he's
an old
great.
School way of thinking, isn't it?
Yeah, but he cuts with his words.
He does, he really does.
I think it takes a certain mind to listen to what he has to say and to be on board with it, because it's put me in states of confusion before, but I know there's purity in it.
I feel like Sadhguru is that of the modern age, but he's not as piercing, because obviously the audience these days don't like things that are that kind of piercing. It tells you what's the way, how things are, and how you are, and why you are the way you are. I think it hurts a little too much, so it's definitely more sensitive these days. And I think Sadhguru definitely gets the balance right. Yeah,
because he does have a lovely approach. He can be jokingful with his words and like bring them across like a loving granddad who is going to say, hey, stop being a knob, here's why, but do it and you go, okay, fair point, I get what you're saying. Other teachers, and there's a different teacher for everyone, isn't there? It's to see which ones we gel with and which work for us. But my main practice now, besides my pranayamas, my breathwork meditation, is to be feeling, is to read my own book, the book of me, and discover it now. Because as Krishnamurti says, the history of mankind is in you. We've all got the same brain. Yes, the mind likes to tell us we're individual, but we've all got the same brain, we've all got the same body, we've all got the same systems pretty much.
It's basically his story.
His story, man.
So it's your story.
Exactly, it's us, it's all in us. And I'm really grateful to be at the point where I'll let myself learn from myself and not put it outside now. And it's not to discredit or not believe what somebody else is saying or think it's the right or the wrong way. It's like, how does it function with what I feel and what my experience is? Because that is the only way. And this is why Krishnamurti is big on there's no teacher, no gurus, no master, no savior. It's you. You have to do the work. You have to do the understanding. And if that means you've got to go and express your anger out in a detrimental way, you will learn from it, because you can be told not to do that. And I suppose this is a personal one for me, for my past repression of anger and work with it currently and in the past, is you can be told not to do that and you know it's wrong, but for me that just harboured more like resentment of my own anger, and it's like, that's a feeling, man. I need to learn from it by learning how to express it correctly. And a lot of that was to feel anger, and it actually gave me strength. Not that I would use that anger on somebody or something, but it goes, no, let yourself have and feel the anger. I can say this, or I can believe in myself, or I can not be persuaded by somebody else and let the whole world trample on me in a way because it's kind and passive.
I've just had a conversation with a friend about this before the breathwork class. So the emotions and the feelings you feel are completely normal. They're natural. They go in order with nature. It's how you respond to those and how you take action.
Yeah, man, how you respond to them. How you respond. I put a post on Instagram which just yesterday, and it was a picture of the four elements. It was really cool art. Somebody on Instagram was like, I like to screenshot and share these cool bits of art out. And it was fire and rock and earth and air. And I just put the post that these elements are in your emotions, and it's like fire, anger, or kindness and gentleness can be like the support of the earth, or the water of the emotions, the stiffness of rock. And it's it's great, man. It's like that is elemental form of our experience of life, like inside us. Love that stuff. But that's where I am spirituality wise, mate. And let's dive into you. Let's hear from what it is with you.
I think we briefly again covered it in the first podcast, my spiritual practice and how I got into it, just like yours. And again, I'll just briefly recap it before we get into the deeper stuff. So I come from a Hindu family, a long traditional Hindu family. So we're known as Vaishnavas, which basically means that we we practice our spirituality around the avatar Vishnu. And certain sectors of Vaishnavas are, well, I think most sectors, we're not supposed to eat meat, fish, eggs, onion and garlic. I know there are other Hindu practices which allow the consumption of meat. And again, Hinduism's very fluid. It's not about what's right and wrong. It's about what are the consequences of doing certain things. So action and reaction, karma, as we say. And the karma in the Eastern tradition is completely different to karma in the West. Karma in the West is just pretty much, if you do something bad will happen to you. Karma in the East is everything you do. So everything you do in this material plane has an opposite and equal reaction. So if you do something bad to someone else, it's going to come back to you eventually. Maybe not in this lifetime, maybe in another lifetime. So this is where the reincarnation goes into it. And you carry the karma of the previous births as well. So whatever you've done in your past lives, you set off on your journey in the next life from that basis. So, and for me, it was something that made a lot of sense, because everything you do, certain people start off in a better situation. Certain people have disadvantages. We talked about people having disabilities in the last one, and people have their circumstances. But one thing you have to get straight is, and what a lot of people in India do get this wrong, is they may see a beggar on the street or someone who's severely disabled and doesn't have any limbs, and people will just say, oh, that's his karma, don't worry about him. But then when you say to him, if that was your child, then where's the karma there? You want to do everything for that person because he belongs to you, and you have feelings attached to this person, but as soon as it's someone that you don't care about, it's now suddenly karma.
Disengaged.
So I had moments in my spiritual practice, and it comes down to naivety and not fully understanding what the practice was all about, to be quite rebellious against it and say, look, if Hinduism is preaching karma, then it's saying to people that it's okay if people are in bad situations, but it's not. It's saying the opposite. It's saying you can control those circumstances. Just because you are given certain tools when you're starting off doesn't mean that you can add more. Doesn't mean that you can't add more tools to it or take tools away. And I think if you come from that framework, then it makes things a lot easier. So I was growing up in a Hindu family. We moved to the UK when I was 3 years old. I have certain memories as a childhood, so when I was 3 years old in India, and people ask me, maybe it's because you see pictures and photos of yourself, but we really don't have many pictures of ourselves in India. So I have very vivid memories of living life in India, because I used to live pretty much in a farm, so surrounded by animals, buffaloes, cows, oxen, a lot of dogs, a lot of cats. So it was pretty much a very holistic lifestyle. And you definitely have memories there, because if you're living life to its fullest, then you're going to have really vivid
big
memories.
Emotional imprint.
Yeah, exactly. And and then I moved to the UK, and we started off again in the UK. The lifestyle completely got turned upside down. We were integrated into the British culture, and it was great.
Why did you come to the UK? Why was you
it's quite personal, but I'll just briefly go into it, so I don't want to go too much in depth with it. Maybe save it for another podcast. So my dad had previously come to the UK 2 years prior. So this was 1991, I think it was, or maybe even the latter part of 91, the early part of 92. And he just came here to check it out. And he loved it here. And then when he went back to India, my father and my grandfather had a bit of a spat. And back in them days, the son would still live with the parents even when he's got his wife for a good number of years, just so that the wife becomes accustomed to the traditions, and then he'll probably move. So my father was obviously living with his grandfather, and we were all living together, and there was a lot of friction, and it was coming, and I think my grandfather kicked my father out. And so then we moved to the UK, and we lived with a bunch of families here in the UK for a bit. And so we started there, moved around quite a bit. I remember my early childhood, we must have changed 4 or 5 times, four or five different locations in the space of about a year. So it was a really interesting time of just change, but as a kid you don't really respond to it. You just be like, okay, you move from one place to the next place.
This is life.
And then when we got into school, then it became stable. So into primary school, the temple I used to go to, we were very much in it with the Eastern philosophy. So it wasn't like I missed a huge part of my culture back in India, because we had it in the UK, which was perfect for us. And then as I was growing up, I started to realize that both paths are now starting to part way. Originally, they were pretty much in sync. As a child, you don't really need to focus on the deeper stuff. You just need to focus on your own spiritual practice, which is learning about your culture and your religion, and then the Western practice, which is learning about how to get through life in a way in the Western world. And it wasn't much of a problem back then, but then as I started growing up, I started to realize that I was doing things out of compulsion or someone telling me what to do, and not really doing it out of consciousness. So when we used to have the mark on our forehead, I used to do it out of compulsion, not realizing why I was doing it. And when I used to do my daily puja, again, it was out of compulsion and not realizing why I was doing it. But so many years later, now I really understand it. I really understand the concept of having a sadhan, which is basically your daily spiritual practice, which for us was your daily puja in the morning. And
puja,
so you kind of it goes down the path of devotional service. Right. So back to yoga in the Sanskrit term, and you focus your energy on God or whatever you call God, maybe the universe, and you channel it in. So you are still practicing spirituality, but you're doing it in a more concentrated way. The reason why Hindus actually believe in having statues or pictures of gods is so that you can focus your energy and your mind on something. So if I say to you, focus your mind on your breath or your prana, which is what's known as, or the sense objects or how the floor feels, and then how the sun's affecting your body and etc. You can focus on certain things. When you have an image, you can really concentrate and then shut everything else out. So when you know that your mind is straying, the image disappears. You bring it back to the image, right. And your focus is just to, as soon as it strays, pull it back.
I think it's interesting you say that, because there are other religions, the Islam religion, where
they don't have no
images of Muhammad, or some other traditions that won't have any iconography because they say it's them worship of the item.
Yes,
but I think that can be misconstrued into, because what you're saying there, if that. And being an extreme disciplinarian for myself in certain areas, it's to see that you can accept help and get it from things if they give you that feeling. Like if that book or that like the yantras or an image or something that helps you cultivate that feeling, then use it. It's not to be dependent on us always, but it's to go, this gives me that. Because I once had a part where I was just everything so solitary and I can do this myself and I don't need anything. And it's like, it did develop very strong will and discipline to a point where I believe whatever I want to do, I know I will get it done if I really want to get and do it, because I've cultivated strong discipline. But at the same time, that took me down a path of isolation and away from everything, because I don't need anybody, I don't need anything. And it made me go cold in a way, to missing out on what life has to offer. And to use things that are around us, to use it but not be used by it, make the energy exchange fair, but use it. So if those images help, bring it in, get the feel of it, like mantra, mantras help, they still the mind. An image helps, it gives you the feeling
Plus we have 5,000 years of traditions, so some of the stuff that our culture was doing back then, it's stood the test of time, and it's very important. So we have a ceremony called the Abhishek, which is basically the bathing of an idol. And they use the 5 purest substances, which is milk, honey, ghee, sugar, and there's one more, yogurt. And they bathe the idol with that. It's an amazing, powerful ceremony. There's videos on it on YouTube, you can check it out. And it's one of those moments where when you witness it, you definitely feel present. You feel like you're right there, and your practice is definitely taken up a notch. And it's something that we always did. So we obviously had these ceremonies every year on an anniversary of a temple. There's 8 temples that we visit across the UK. There's 3, or there's actually more than that. I think there's about 5 in London, 1 in Cardiff, 1 in Oldham, 1 in Bolton. And that's the 8 temples. So we were really connected, and we were connected to the other people from the same community back in London and then across the UK as well. So we definitely had a very tight community. And then when I got into my teenage years, then I just started to notice that there was politics kicking in. Religion always has politics. Any belief system has politics. And
do you think that's required?
That's why I got turned away from it. Right. So when the politics was there, I was like, this isn't about spiritual practice anymore. This is about who's got the biggest, who's got the biggest amount of money, or who's got the biggest power or say in the whole thing. And I was like, this is not what I feel. I feel like this should be very individual. And again, it's based on different communities. So if you look at the Hare Krishnas, they have their politics, but their culture is centered around individualism. So how the practice works serves you and it serves your family or your friends. Whereas ours was a bit more about how to make everything grandiose, how to make everything bigger. And again, Hinduism's always been about that, because the whole of our scriptures are based on these epic battles and just drama. So I feel like I didn't really resonate with that. I wanted things to just be based on the individual. What are you experiencing? Yeah, you'll have your flaws and you have your strengths, but it doesn't mean I should come along and say you should be doing this and you should be doing that. And I felt like it was going down that way. And I felt like over the last maybe 30 years, 40 years, because of the insecurity of other religions, Hinduism has become the same. So now people have their own sort of belief systems and they're very rigid about what you should believe and what you shouldn't believe. So when I was growing up, we were told what to believe and what not to believe. And again, it cultivated this environment inside of me where it didn't resonate with me. There's just a lot of dissonance in the body. So I rebelled, was against it for at least about 5 years of my life. I didn't really care about it.
So were you doing anything in those 5 years?
I was still visiting temple and I was still participating, but I wasn't active.
Yeah.
It was passively participating, just going there, doing my little bit and going home.
Like going to church on a Sunday,
and
just sat there because you're told to do it.
Exactly.
And people are doing it because they think it will get them somewhere.
Or it's the other thing where you've got a community of people, which means you belong to a family. So people are not willing to let go of that family, even though they may have squabbles and have a lot of friction with the people there. They know that if they're out of that, they're alone. And I was happy with that. So it took many years for me to get to that stage where I felt if I was out of it, I was completely happy. This is where I am right now. But also now I feel like I can integrate back into it with not having any attachment to it, which is where you want to be healthily. Are
you accepted back for doing that, or is it like...
I was never thrown out. So I just got myself out of the situation, and then whenever I go back, it's perfect. It's fine.
That's lovely.
And the guys that I've grown up with, a lot of them don't know what's happened, but the ones that are close to me understand the process, and a lot of them have kind of experienced a similar thing in their lives. So that happened. But the funny thing was, I never got into like the typical stuff. So I never got into drugs, never got into alcohol, and I was fortunate that I still had my basic dharma. So I wanted to make sure that I was following my 5 sort of protocols, which is basically not to steal, not to commit adultery. I'm still young for that. Not to intoxicate oneself, to a level where you start causing problems in your life, not to commit suicide, and the final one was not to gamble. But then gambling is a funny one, because I really enjoyed doing things that were based on seeking adrenaline, just being an adrenaline junkie, and I thought, maybe is that gambling life? So I don't know. Then I just thought, well, if I'm driving my car and one day I get into a crash, that's kind of gambling
Good
as
way
well.
To see it, man.
So I feel like it's very nuanced, but I think people in the community were putting people into brackets and saying this is right and this is wrong. So this is gambling, where you go out there and you use your money and you spend it in irresponsible ways, which is fair enough. If you spend it in a irresponsible way, then you're gambling. But at the same time, every time you cross the street, that's a gamble. There's a chance that you might get run over. So life's a gamble. On
your balance on it. It's funny because thinking, I've done all of those things except for suicide. I've done all of them, but that, and it's just always so interesting that you can be told these things and you can still go against them or do them, but you have to trust your own path, don't you? And it's funny because we're so dependent on other people until we become adults ourselves, and even when we're adults, it can still take a lifetime or never until we realize it. I'm responsible for myself and I can have my own experiences and pave my own way. But I love it. I love that those things served you for not doing them. And maybe the gambling, depending on how you see it. And I agree, man. It's a great way to say that. If I'm racing the car, I'll go fast. I was gambling. So it's to see that the surface level of the word is the reason why we're told those things, because they go deeper than don't drink. Well, what's saying it's don't drink? It's don't get intoxicated, because something bad can happen. You could combine that with the gambling in the car, run someone over and ruin a life. And that's your karma then that you've brought on. And it's great, man. It's great.
So I felt the teachings were very surface level, so they were very much allowed to be interpreted in whatever way you wanted to see fit. But they were teaching the kids in a way that was very rigid. You know, like you have to think it's this and this and that. And I was like, that's great, but then again, these kids will experiment. The life that we live in, you're going to experiment.
Western world and
everything. And I agree with what you said before. The best way you'll learn in life and the best way to cultivate your spirituality is through experience. Try everything out, to a certain degree. I'm not saying try and commit suicide, but try everything out to a reasonable level in a conscious way, and then see if it serves you. If it doesn't serve you, then you got your answer. If it serves you, then continue doing it until it doesn't serve you. Yeah,
man. I had a friend, and he, great lad, and he was kind of getting on the spiritual path, and he was young as well, and bright mind, and a big heart, and he was figuring things out, and he discovered a few experiences. He's like, I want to try more experience, because he was talking about getting into psychedelics at the time.
Right.
And I was like, well, if you're at the point where that's required, then fine, do it safely and understand what you're doing it for. But if you're doing it just to do it, is that enough reason? Because he's talking about doing coke, he's like, I want to try cocaine, because he'd never done drugs, and he was from a Muslim background as well, and maybe that was a backlash because they were told these things. And my advice at that point was like, you're not going to get much good from that experience.
Yeah.
You know? And I tried to persuade in the way, because you still got to be open. Like, if that person's going that way, for me, it was like, do my best to say, listen, I can't see much benefit coming from it. I've done it myself. And for me, it was never really for me, that kind of drug. It wasn't myself. I didn't feel good as I was doing it. But again, it's different medicine for different people.
Yeah.
But there's certain things or energy that can we give guidance and advice, but not be controlling for somebody, because at the end of the day, they will have to figure things out for themselves. And Sadhguru, he said once in one of his talks, was that the best way to learn about life is your own experience. The smartest way to learn is listen to guidance from somebody else. And if that scratches the itch, great, because a lot of things I've learned so much from other people, but sometimes, even if it's been detrimental, I've had to go and do it. And I've learned that way, because you're no longer in your back of your mind. Like, I read something really good. It was towards Brahmacharya, actually, and it was a talk from Tantra and Brahmacharya, which is something we're definitely going to get into. And it's this book I'm reading on sexual energy in yoga. And this woman says it. She was from Eastern Europe, and her tradition towards it was like a Catholic upbringing. And her backlash was that she was told to stay away from sex and abstain. But her point was, how can I give something up that I've never had? And I was like, wow, I love that. I love that a lot. How can you give it up when you don't know it in and out? Now, maybe this past lives, like, it's interesting for you not drinking, you know, because that could have been past life stuff that you've done before, or you're not pulled to that experience. So
I think it's from that. I think it's more to do with the fact that maybe in a previous life or previous lifetime, you've done it, and then you know deep down inside, you might try it out, and then as soon as you try it out, you think, actually, you know what, this doesn't feel like I want to continue pursuing it. And then you think, okay, maybe I don't need to follow that path.
That's it, man. It's like that knowing in yourself, whether we don't even need to go into the past lives for other people's, whether it's in their belief system or not. It can just be, it's as simple as, that's not for me. You know, I tried it, or you're not even pulled to do it, and everyone's like, come and try this, and you're like, I just don't feel the need to.
Yeah, I think that was my relationship with alcohol, because I had a lot of friends that were drinking and stuff, and they were saying to me, you know, you should try it out. And I was like, to be fair, mate, I just don't see the point of it. I don't see the point of tasting something that doesn't taste very nice in the first place. I'd rather stick with Vimto or Ribena, you know, and at least
strong stuff.
Yeah,
no water.
Exactly, just to concentrate. I think I need to put that camera back on.
Good.
Yeah, we're good. I wanted to talk about the monk experience as well. So, like I mentioned in the first podcast, we were surrounded by monks. So it was about every 4 to 6 weeks, we would get a visit from 7 monks. So there are different monks. Like how do you describe it? There's like groups of monks that belong to sort of one leader in the sector of Hinduism. So you'll have the Pope monk, and then he'll have other smaller groups.
The Pope monk.
Yeah, but basically the equivalent of the Pope
monk? What's the name
He's
of that?
He's the main. We call it a Man Swami. So,
Man Swami.
Yeah, so he's the Mahant Swami.
What does Swami actually mean?
Guru in a way.
Guru.
I think the best way to describe it is a guru or an aesthetic.
And guru is it like light in the darkness, or someone who's lit? Is that
someone who's awakened in a way. So a teacher, basically. A guru means teacher. And it's Swami either means a guru or ascetic, someone who's practicing a path that's from, it's, how do we describe it? It's not the traditional path. It's a path of just devotional service and cultivating themselves. So we would have the Mahant Swami, which is the main leader, which is basically the Pope, and then he'll have his own smaller pockets, his smaller little leaders around, and then they'll have their own disciples. And we would get visited by one pocket every 7 weeks or 6 to 7 weeks. So we were getting teachings left, right, centre. But the issue with that was, again, you're in that environment where you don't know any different. So it's like, you're saying this stuff to me, but you've never experienced the Western culture. So how can you tell me not to, go out there and sleep with women or do this and that when you've never experienced it? But as I've gotten older, I've started to realise that they actually know more than we do. From what 5,000 years of history have said for India, they know that the way to go about it is to find one person ideally and then not even have sex with them until... I get the whole concept of sex after marriage, not before marriage. I get fully understand it now. So...
in what sense does that understanding come from?
It was about... There are 4 stages in life that you tend to take. So the first one is the Brahmacharya ashram. They're known as ashrams. So Brahmacharya ashram basically means that from the ages of 0 to 21, maybe pushing it up to about 24, 25, depending on whether you're doing a master's or a PhD, you stay as... It's known as a student ashram. So you're a student, you're learning, your level of learning is much higher. In that period of time, we know that from studies, Western studies, that we tend to learn and pick up things a lot quicker when we're younger.
A sponge.
Yes, we literally absorb everything. Kids learn through mimicry, so the rate that we learn is a lot quicker than it'll ever be throughout our lives after that. So you want to try and cultivate and learn as much as possible in that period.
Take advantage of that.
Exactly.
I think at this point, man, as well, if you just explain what Brahmacharya means. Because it's something we'll go into in the future.
Sure. So Brahmacharya there's many meanings to it, and again, it's something that Sadhguru specifically said, which made me think, okay, that's a really interesting way of saying it. So Brahmacharya, for most people, they assume it's celibacy, but the way Sadhguru defines it is celibacy's relationship with Brahmacharya is what twisting your body and bending your body is to yoga. So it's not that, it's just one aspect of it. But the whole purpose of Brahmacharya is it's known as a student path, the path of the bachelor, which is basically you learn as much as possible and you save the energy for yourself, for growth, self-actualization, self-realization. And then once you've got enough sort of vigor and you're pretty much certain on what you want to focus on, and your
devotion's cultivated.
Yes,
it's the path to God, right? Is it
Brahmacharya is Brahman is the actual universe, and Acharya basically means ultimate. So it's the ultimate path. And that's the literal definition of it. And it's the path of spirituality, just staying on the right path. It's the path that supposedly the universe wants you to go down, but most people are never on it until eventually they'll take a birth where they...
Because we've got those sensory organs, right?
We're conditioned to just seek temporary pleasures. And it's said that yogis are not against simple pleasures. They're just for spiritual pleasures. They see that spiritual pleasures are way more interesting and more deeper and more meaningful than the sort of simple pleasures.
I think looking at how when they come around, like the spiritual pleasures, and from my own life and having my own addictions and stuck into my own habits of the past and thinking, oh, this is great, this is good, I'll go do that thing, and you get stuck on all kinds of things. But then when finding something which was spiritual to me was... That's it. That's what I want to be feeling. Like, we had a conversation with one of the participants today after breathwork, and he was like, I'm going so fast and hard because he wants that, and he wants that experience again. Which again, there's a lot to learn in that, but he's found something greater than what he was getting from something outside of that.
So it's a stepping stone.
It's knowing that I'm done with these sensorial pleasures now, because I know whether it's for me it was drugs and sex and food, like big addictions came from these things, and it was like, because they would hit a certain pleasure, but it's never fully fulfilling because it comes back. I want sex again. I want that food again. I want that smoke a joint again. Never finished. And yes, there's pleasure there, and all those things can be cultivated in the right way. It's never the thing that's the addiction, it's you that's addicted to the feeling of it. because you can use anything constructively. It's like they say with guns. Well, guns don't fire themselves. It's the person who pulls the trigger, right?
Yeah.
But when those energies were directed towards something that's taking me to a greater level of existence, for me, truth is a big thing, and spiritual connection is a big thing. And being able to convert, like drugs, using the psychedelics for the deeper experience, using sex for tantra and retaining the semen and building energy up, like those two things were things I had very strong addictions to that had no direction to take me to the ocean. Do you know what I mean? They were just like the river that would end up hitting a dam, or it would leak out and it wouldn't go anywhere. It's like remove the blocks and let those vehicles take you to the ocean, because they can, and that's crafting spirituality in the everyday life, which also showed me that my aversions and my addictions actually had purpose. I was just using them wrong. And when I realized that, it's like, I'm not fucked up. I'm not stuck on these problems or these guilts or these shames that have plagued me in the past. It was just, I didn't know how to use these tools correctly. And that gave me a lot of sense of freedom, yet enhanced my spirituality, because they were part of my path. I just didn't know how to use them correctly. And that was like, yes.
Yeah.
I was happy with myself for that. You know, it's like, thank you for the understanding of showing me these things.
Again, it comes back to experiencing everything. So you do it, you see whether it works for you, and eventually, if it doesn't serve you, get rid of it, cut it out. But most people will never do that because they know nothing more than that.
Yes, we're not learning from the same mistake again and again and again. Like, that's just what you're doing it. Yeah. No, we're just not learning. We're not learning. We're not aware of.
There's always a lesson to learn from everything. So every single situation I've been in, I can tell you multiple times that I've been knocked down, then I have to get back up again. And there's one thing that's always kept me in check, which is having the optimistic outlook in life, knowing that there's a light at the end of the tunnel all the time. So I think I got through life, and I went through my little depression period from the ages, in my teenage years to early 20s. So I had to get through that, and that really cultivated my spirituality, to finally understand that that period of time was a period of just sadness, trauma, etc. But it was a huge period of time for growth, to understand it in that way. And that was the biggest thing. I learned more from that period than I've ever done since then, especially for a large chunk of time. So going back to the ashrams, so we have the Brahmachari ashram. We'll talk about Brahmachari in a future podcast in more depth. But there's the Brahmachari ashram, which is basically the ashram for the student. You cultivate that energy, you keep it within. Ideally, you don't want to expel that energy. So when let's say when you're dating someone, or you've got your attention on someone, you are now giving that energy out to someone else. So you want to be cultivating that energy, and that's why they say when you're in the Brahmachari ashram, you ideally shouldn't be looking for someone. You shouldn't be looking for someone that's your partner or a girlfriend, etc. You should be focusing on yourself. Yes, life happens, circumstances happen, people come to you, and that's okay, but actively looking. I think for me, it's not to be actively seeking it. Have it in the back of your mind. If you find someone that's amazing and you coincide with them, then great, get to know them. But don't go out there actively looking. You want to cultivate that energy for yourself to develop you as a person. And then you move on to the Grust ashram, which is basically the householder. So this is when you're married, and then now you've got a base. You've done well in your career, so now you've got pretty much got a base where you can create your own family. So you've got the Grust ashram, and then it moves on to the God, I forgot it. But I forgot the term of it. But it basically means the sort of semi-retired ashram. Right. So this is where you're in your later 50s, and your kids have started to have their own kids. So now you're pretty much prepared to give up. So this is where you start becoming celibate again. So you no longer have sex with your partner or your wife anymore. And then the final one is you relinquish everything. So you give everything up, and it's known as the Vanaprastha ashram. So I missed the middle one. I can't remember what it's called. But this final one is where, in the past, what would happen in India is the couple that are now in their 60s and the 70s would give up their name, their title, everything, relinquish it, give it to the sons and the grandsons, etc., and then they would move into the forest. So this was done in the last age,
There was a community in the forest where they lived, right?
Well, and you would live on your own, actually. You and your wife would live on your own, maybe in a small house, and you almost become a hermit. Yeah, basically, you live as a hermit. You don't identify yourself as a person you were before. So I'm no longer a businessman, I'm no longer this spiritual master, etc. You are just you. And then we have the extended position, or the side position, which is you become a sannyasi. which is the one that renounces his material world. So you become a sage or a swami or a guru, and that ashram is completely different to the other one. So if you're on that path, the other ones don't matter to you because you're no longer looking for a life partner. Your practice is based on spirituality and self-growth and realization as well, self-realization.
It makes my heart come alive, man. I love hearing this stuff. Like there's a big pull for me personally to be at that point. And
let's talk about that actually.
It's quite a bit of a conflict at a point after getting into Buddhism. I did loads of retreats, and it wasn't just, it was never surface level for me. Like, oh, I'll go to retreat to see. I mean, I went in deep. I loved it. Like, I just connected with it straight away, especially Tibetan Buddhism. It was like, and I've had certain experiences like watching old documentaries or being in places in China, like seeing certain iconography, and it just, something happens, like I've just cried before. I've just cried and I felt something, like, and I can't explain it. It's just something knows something, right? And it's just anything, I think, where we have those natural pulls towards for the most bizarre reasons. Again, there's nothing in my history, my personal history of this life that's like, that's why you like that, or that's why you feel that way, you know. So I was always attracted to Tibetan Buddhism, but always had a big love for the East and Taoism and Hinduism. And
to a certain degree, you wanted to go off and be a monk for a bit.
Well, this was where conflict came for me at a point, because I'd studied so much doing these different kinds of retreats and spending time a lot of time at Sami Ling, which is a Tibetan temple in Scotland, which is fantastic. I love the place, and my own study, my own disciplines and practices. But there came a point where I just wanted to go to India and just get in a monastery and stay there, or Thailand, and I was looking at it seriously, like, right, save up the money, get away. There was a retreat in Scotland which was a year. I think it cost something like, it wasn't mega, it was like 12 grand or something. You pay that and you're there for a year with like 5 other people, and even now I would love to do it. This apartment still wants to do it. It's just a case of the conflict came when about like, should I go or should I stay, or should I go or should I stay? And I have a teacher who's very helpful and very beneficial, and he's saying, like, see through whether it's the ego that wants to go or whether it's, you know, something that you'll benefit from and be able to share back. And I concluded after months of like deliberating with myself and talking it out that I thought, okay, I can let go of it, because there was a joy in my life where I'm very happy where I am, and I'm learning enough to keep feeding that side of me. And a lot of it was bringing that practice of what you're saying, that the older age into my life now, and still being with the world, but bringing that practice out and living it. And that's where I get my joy from, is my dedication to the spiritual side, because it's not effort. There's no effort for that. It's actually harder. It's more effort for me to go out and socialize and to be a part of the world than it is for me to want to sit and meditate and breathe or have these conversations. And
we have a term for that in Sanskrit called viragya. So you live your life as a monk in this life, but you just don't renounce your material world. You still participate in it, but viragya translates to having no color. So you don't have any sort of attachment to what's happening around you. You stay detached and you still cultivate the life of a monk. You know, you still practice your spirituality, but you do it in front of, which is a harder path to do it whilst you're involved in everything.
Well, that was a big point of what one of my teachers helped me realize as well, is like, I'm born in Manchester, you know, and I've never been one for holidays. Like, it's always been a thing with partners or girlfriends who, let's go on holiday, and they love to. And don't get me wrong, holidays are amazing. I've been to Japan, been to China, and they were actually more study based. They weren't for a holiday, because when we go to a holiday, we generally go, right, we're shutting off the conscious mind. We're gonna drink, we're gonna party, never for me that really stuff, other than when I was younger until I got to meditation. Because if I'm going away, I'm paying some money. I want to develop something from it. Like, I want to go to a place where it feeds me spiritually.
You want to cultivate an experience.
Yeah, man. But being in Manchester, it's like, I'm here for a reason. You know, I'm in Manchester and I have these mad interests which could easily take me to Thailand or to Tibet or to China or to India and stay there. But I am happy here, and I'm very fortunate that the people I connect to, or what people, you know, understand through conversation, or what we have, it's like, this is right, and this podcast is right, and what the information we can share is right, and never in a sense of live this way or that way. But the West, there's a spiritual reemergence coming on. Like, we can see it all around, and witnessing that over the last 7 years, I suppose, of my life, and when it tweaked, and seeing people grow, and people who were the exact opposite. And I know it, and I know people who were the exact opposite, and something happened, and they're like, right, I can understand love, or they understand energy healing, or they understand concepts of meditation or spirituality, or they see habits and problems that were developed and we're not leading them anywhere. And it's like, right, I want to spread that. I want to be a part of getting that message out there and helping, not pushing it, not being the preacher in the street who's like, come to Jesus or you're going to burn in hell, and because that doesn't work. And I tried that route at a point, shouting and ringing the bell. Not literally with a megaphone, but being quite preaching my beliefs and my thoughts, because I benefited so much, so you will, and it doesn't work that way. While when you accept your path and you're doing the best you can with yourself, other people see it and feel it, and they will frequency, right? And this is where the science of energy and vibration comes into who we are and what we are. Is you will attract them people. Like when we met 3 years ago for that one time.
Oh yeah.
We met that one time based on a past partner, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And that was it. And we didn't see each other again until earlier this in 2019 at Gym and Juice, and then we're working at Block together, and now we're doing this podcast. It's like there's too many connections and things going on that show me that you're supposed to be doing these things. Just follow your heart, follow the breadcrumbs of energy that fill you up, that make you feel a 10, that make you feel alive, and your life will become that.
Well, you did say that back then you tried to do a podcast with multiple other people, but it just wasn't flowing. Whereas when we started having these conversations at coffee shops and stuff, it was just like, I said to you, it's funny how we don't have a camera rolling here, but we could have done easily. Because the type of conversations we're having, each conversation we have is different to the previous one, and it kind of interlinks between the next conversation as well. So I think you just have to find, I've always been a lone wolf in this.
Same.
And I feel like when you're on this path on your own, because you know that the rest of the people around you are not on that path, and it's okay for them not to be on that path, but the fact that you're doing it yourself, it can become very lonely and lonesome sometimes. So you feel like you're a lone wolf, and I've always felt like that, and I was, to a certain degree, I come to terms with that. And I said, if I don't find anyone who's like me, I'm okay with that. I can live with that. So, and as soon as you feel that, you actually attract people who are like you afterwards. So that's how I guess you and I were put on the right path to meet each other. And I just find it really fascinating how now when you're in the vicinity of people who think in a similar way, you feel finally at home. You belong somewhere. This is where you don't necessarily have to have the drive to go off to be a monk. But then again, for me, it's something that's always been presented to me. I've had 3 times I can remember in the past, over the last 10 years, where a monk from my community has said to me, you should try this path out. Maybe just even try it out for a couple of weeks or something. And I've got a good friend of mine who hopefully will bring on the podcast when he's free. He tried it out. He went to be a monk for a bit. He did, I think the first time he did 3 months and then 6 months and then an entire year, just going out then and living with the monks and shadowing a life of a monk. And from, I think, his last journal, when he did it, he actually recorded all the amazing experiences that he had. And I was just like, wow. I literally fell in love with the experiences that he was having. So, and it's sometimes for some people, it's a scratch that needs to be itched. I think maybe you just need to do it and see how it is for you. And if it doesn't resonate with you, great. You come back and you take the teachings that you've learnt and you try and share it with as many people as possible.
Yeah, man. I think it is in me, and I will do it, and I know I will do it. It's like, I say jokingly, I won't come back, do you know what I mean? But I know I would. It's like, I would just go and I would love it so much. Because every time I go to a retreat, I'm doing the 10-day silent retreat where no one's talking for 10 days, and you get the Dharma, the teaching at the evening at 8 o'clock, and you have 2 meals, and it's like, I'm home. You know what I mean? I loved it. Absolutely loved it. But if I'm there doing that, who am I helping here? What conversations are we out sharing, or where are we in Block doing the breath work or doing the movements? Even when it was personal training, still physically helping, and I get joy from doing that job too. And it's like everything wins from that. So it's the balance, isn't it? It's like, I'll go and do that. I think I'll definitely do a month. Like, that won't ever be an issue. Do a month somewhere. I'd like to do 3 months and then, okay, come back now, and keep it at that point. And then when the time's right, when I'm older or whatever my life is, I always see retirement as
renunciation.
Going off.
So that ashram that I just said, the final ashram, the Banasprasth.
That's where I envision myself.
I've always felt that. So we've had conversations about this in the temple that I used to go to. And we used to do presentations as the youth. And one of the presentations was, and the debate was, is that final ashram applicable to the modern day society? And my argument was, it is. It just means that you don't have to move into the forest, but you give up everything that you have. You give that to your kids and your children and etc., and then the people that you love, and then you move on, and then you take a path of just focusing on your spirituality before you finally die. I think that for me is a very organic way of living, and it's something that just because we're caught up in the day-to-day chase, we're not even considering that. So, and I think that's the battery dead. These two cameras are running. What time are we on? We're on 54 minutes. Do you want to keep going?
Yeah, I think we'll let's let it finish out.
Right, let me just put
get
the camera
another
back
5
on.
or 10 minutes.
So we're back again. The camera cut out again. Okay, what were we saying?
You were just saying about the renunciation when you've hit a certain point of old age.
Yeah, modern day renunciation.
Yes, it's not there in the modern day.
I think we should definitely, it's a path that we should follow. I think once you're retired, we're already doing that. Once you've retired, you've collected your pension, what are you doing with that money? Well, you're sat at home, enjoying your life, having experiences. Well, why don't you cultivate a spiritual practice? Especially when you're already on that path, it's the time to really cultivate that practice. And I think that is the true way of going out with a bang, I guess. But not even a bang, it's just like you're going out silently for the night. So, yeah.
This is how the world ends, not with a bang, but with a whimper.
With a whimper,
I can't remember if that was T.S. Eliot maybe, but...
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I agree with that. I think it should end with a whimper, not with a bang. Some people will go out with a bang, and that's fine. But then for most people, the path is to go out with, a bit more solemn, a bit more focus. Right. I think we want to wrap this up now.
Yeah, man, wonderful conversation. Really enjoyed this one.
This is the one that we really wanted, right? We wanted to have a conversation like this.
That's it. I think as we're going into it, we want to cover topics. It covers so much, but it's the essence of spirituality and consciousness and life itself, right? That we really love and that we're really passionate about. And there's way more for this. I think this is spirituality part 1. There's more I want to get into in beliefs about God, our universe.
I was just going to say that. The next couple of podcasts, it'd be nice to cover brahmacharya and sexual tantra, and then go into God, what God is for people, and then the size of the universe and the rest of the topics. I'm looking forward to those.
For sure.
Right, so this was podcast number 4, and we've just wrapped up. Hopefully you guys enjoy this. Again, we're going to try and put this on Spotify, so hopefully... The first one is already on there by the time we put this one on. We'll put the other 2 on there as well, and hopefully you guys can listen to this on Spotify. SoundCloud as well?
SoundCloud, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, I think we'll put it on SoundCloud as well. And then you guys can always check it out on YouTube.
Yeah.
Right, we're
done.
Yeah,
give it a like and a share, guys, and comment anything for us. We'd love to hear from what you say and what your opinions on these are. And
we've had a lot of good feedback on the first podcast.
Wonderful.
We've got it from strangers as well. So it'd be nice if you guys could tell us what you like about the podcast, and maybe something that you would like us to change, or maybe something that you would like us to cover as well. Because
that helps us. You're helping us by speaking out and giving us a bit of direction from your side too.
Yeah. Right. Perfect.
A lot of love to you all.
Right. We'll see you in the next one.